on you with their friends, girl, you got it.
Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. I'm Ashanti and I'm going to show y'all how I got this smoky eye look. So of course I started off with skin prep and I'm just going to use my Amber Lee's moisturizer, and I think I used my e.l.f. putty primer on her today, and then I spray her face with some Mario Badescu spray, and I make sure that I got in the creases of her nose and underneath her eyes. But those are all the steps I did for skin prep, but I didn't show each step, but that's what I did. I decided to add these little patches under her eye because I knew I was going to have a lot of fallout, and this was just easy for cleanup later on, and it adds some extra moisturizer underneath her eyes so the product doesn't get cakey, so why not? So I used my e.l.f. eye lift to smooth her eyebrows down, and I just filled in the tail just a little bit. I went in and carved out her eyebrows with my Tarte concealer. I went really slowly. I only filled in the tail of her eyebrows because her eyebrows have a pretty good fluff to them, so I really don't worry about filling in the front. And I just go really slowly to carve out her brows. I start with the tail and then I slowly work my way up to the front. Y'all know I like to use concealer as base, so I'm just going to spread this all over her lid halfway down. I'm not going to fill it out all the way because I'm going to blend that part down there later on. And then I'm going to go through and shape up her brows on the other side. At first her brows were not the same shape, but I stepped back and looked at both of them at the same time and realized they weren't even, and then I just fixed them. After I filled in her eyelid, I just blend that out with this Real Technique new brush, and I set it with some translucent powder. All the translucent powder I'm going to use is going to be Derma Blend. I didn't show the actual packaging this time, but the translucent powder is Derma Blend. I'm going to use it to set her face later on as well. Today I'm going to use two palettes, and the first one is my Sweetest Tea palette from Morphe, and I just take like a mauve color in there. I started by patting this on her lid, and then I patted to blend it out. Then I realized that the color was just not dark enough, and I wanted to go a little darker than this. I liked the color, but it was giving like wine, and I didn't want to give like wine. I don't know, but that wasn't the look I thought I was going for. I didn't really have a particular look in mind when I started, but I knew this was not as dark as I wanted to go. After I finish patting that product in and blending it out on that eye, I just go through and do the same thing to the eyeshadow on the other eye, and I slowly blend it out after I pack it on that lid. If you're ever dealing with a client or even you that has a little bit of a hooded lid, it's okay to just go ahead and lift that brow up so that way you can spread out that skin and see every inch of the eyelid. I think I do this hack in like every video, so I just take the same brush I used to blend out the concealer and I blend out the edges if it's looking a little patchy. This is just a little hack I do to counteract me not blending, and a little bit of cheat code, you know. After I blended that concealer down a little bit, I just went through with that same brush I used with that first eyeshadow with no extra eyeshadow on it, and I went out and blended out the edges. There's like this dark maroon color in that palette. I went and applied this in the middle of her lid with another Real Technique new brush, and I just made sure that I kept this in the center of her lid. I didn't want the outside to be too dark, so I made sure that I kept it in the center. As I was doing that color, I realized I still wanted to go a little darker, so I took this Coffee Shop and I took the darkest brown shade in there, and I just used this right in the center of that last dark color I used. A keynote to getting stuff like directly in the center: have your client like look straight and have their eye closed and just feel around where their pupil is in the middle of their eye, and that way you know what's the middle of their eyelid and you can keep the color directly centered. I took this brow brush because it's just like really skinny, and I usually use this to fill in my eyebrows, but I took my Inglot gel liner and I just created a winged liner, and I added some tape so that way it will be easy for me to clean up later on, because Inglot gel liner can get kind of crazy when you're trying to clean it up. It could blend in with your concealers and everything, so just go ahead and cheat and add some tape onto the corner of your eyes. When I lay my tape for my liner, I try to keep it about at the edge of the eyebrows. If y'all can see, my tape goes from the corner of the eye to the corner of the eyebrows, so that way you don't change too much of the eye shape, because if you put the wrong shape liner, it can really change the shape of your eyes. As y'all can see, when I took the tape off, like if I can get the tape off her face, it's really a clean line, so I don't have to do too much cleaning up after I do this tape method. taking that same Tarte concealer that I used for her eyebrows, I'm just going to use this to start my face routine. I've started using concealer first when I'm doing a more natural face, and I just put the concealer in the same places I would as if I was doing it with the foundation first. I do it underneath her eyes, on her nose, on her forehead and her chin, and a little bit above her lip and her cupid's bow area. I had somebody yesterday ask me on live, why does their makeup look so transparent when they get to blending it out? Y'all, don't be scared to put products on your clients and on your face. If you don't put a lot of products on your face and then you go to blend it out, you're just gonna blend it completely out and then the product is gonna be gone. You can always add more product too. Remember that if a place looks like it doesn't have enough makeup on it, it probably doesn't. You can just go add a little bit more. No one is stopping you or holding you back, boo. After I do the concealer, I go through and blend just the edges with this Real Technique brush. This is not a Real Technique brush. I'm so used to saying that about all of my brushes. This is just another brush I got off Shein. Y'all know I love Shein. That's where I usually get my Real Technique brushes. That's why I'm a little mixed up. Now with the under eye, I blend out the edges, but with her chin, I'm going to just blend that out all the way. I make sure I blend up into her lip and I blend underneath her chin so that way you can't tell where her face starts and stops with the makeup. And I go and blend out the edges of the concealer on her forehead. And I'm going to take this Juvia's Place stick and I'm going to contour her cheeks. I actually thought this was a little too dark, so I took this Anastasia foundation stick and I just went through and finished contouring her forehead, and I added a little bit on her cheeks so I could tone it down just a little bit. For her foundation, I mixed this Juvia's Place stick with some Milani Superstay foundation. The Milani Superstay is actually her exact skin tone, but I like to add a little bit of the Juvia's Place stick for a little bit of bronze on her face, just a little bit. But I place the foundation everywhere that I haven't placed any products, and then I also place the foundation in between the concealer and the contour on her forehead. So her forehead looks like it's a sun. It's going to have the brightest concealer in the middle, and then it's going to have foundation on the outside, and then a contour on the outside of that. It just looks really funny on her forehead now that I'm looking at it. Taking the same brush I used to blend out the edges of the concealer, I'm just going to go through and slowly and lightly blend out her foundation, making sure I'm blending it up into her temples, behind her ear, underneath her jawbone. Just make sure you blend it everywhere so that way no one can tell where your makeup starts and stops. That is gonna be tragic if you can look at your face and tell where your makeup stops. So just make sure you blend it all the way down. I literally bend like halfway upside down so that way I can make sure it's blended underneath their chin. When I do this method, when it comes to blending out contour, I like to start with the forehead first because it has a little bit of foundation on it. So I just blend out the outsides of the contour first, and then I start to slowly work my way down over the foundation and then over the concealer. And as you can see, doing it this way, it works seamlessly every time. I don't know what it is. It's like magic. Ever since I started doing foreheads this way, the blend has been coming out so beautiful. So when I blend out this contour as well, I'm making sure I blend it all the way up into her hairline. I try to push her hair back just a little bit and make sure I'm blending right up to the hairline. You can do this when people don't have laces and they have their real hair out, but if they have lace, try to blend up as close as you can, but not touching their lace with the foundation. After I have the forehead contour blended out, I'm going to go ahead and do the cheeks. And when I blend out the cheeks, I make sure I blend it up into the temples. I kind of blend it in a C motion around the eyebrows to give it sort of like a lifted look. And I ended up having a lot of contour on her cheeks. So I just blended it onto her forehead a little bit. You can see how the left is a little bit lighter than the right side because I blended some of that darker contour onto her forehead. But I just make sure I blend it all out, taking my time, making sure I blend out the contour into the concealer already underneath her eyes as well. After the contour has all blended out, then I go through and I make sure that concealer is blended in between the eyebrows, blending that concealer into the eyebrow hairs and up and down the nose. Now this concealer actually dried. I'm not used to using Tarte. I usually use Too Faced on everybody, but Tarte kind of dried out quicker than I thought, so I just took a little bit more of the product and I went up and down the nose just to blend it out. If your product is dry, just take a little bit of the product and it should blend out seamlessly. I'm going to take the contour stick and go up and down her nose on this flat brush. It's not flat, it's kind of flat and fluffy, but it's really small and it's good for doing the nose contour so that way the line stays straight. I'm using the same color I used on her forehead, and I'm just making sure to go all the way up to her eyebrows so I can get a seamless blend. Now for her brightening concealer, I decided to take the same concealer I used before but add a little bit of cloud, which is usually what I use as my eyeshadow basis. And I just put this right underneath her eyes to add some brightness in the inner corner of her eyes. I'm just not going to take that as far as I took that first concealer. So before I was just placing the color on her nose, now I'm going to actually blend it out with a Real Technique Doux brush. I'm just going to lightly tap up and down, up and down, up and down her nose to get a straight line in the shape that I want. And making sure I blend that color into her eyeshadow and into her eyebrows right in the front. So that way there's no line of demarcation and there's no line from where her eyeshadow stops to where her concealer and her contour starts. I had decided to do a little button nose, that's why her nose is shaped like that. And then I went in with that same concealer just to sharpen up that eyeliner. Remember before, and I told you the ink blot kind of can mess up the concealer, so I just go over it a couple times to build up the coverage. And then I go through with that same brush I was blending out the concealer with before, and I just blend out the edges into that contour I had already blended through her face. After I blended out those edges, I went through and blended out the edge of the concealer closest to her nose contour, and I kind of pressed it in to that nose contour to blend it together. I just pressed it into it, going like up and down so that I can blend it all the way down her nose. You can see it a little bit better on this side. I just go back and forth between each eye until I feel like it's completely blended into that nose contour. And then I'm going to take my powder puff for some continuous blending. And I'm going to use this to get really close up to her eye so that way her eyes doesn't water. And I love using this for getting really close up to the eye because it doesn't irritate it as much as the brush does. Because I did use such dark shadows, there were quite a bit of fallout and I actually forgot to clean off some. So I'm just going to go through and add some more concealer on top of those areas that I didn't clean out. They looked a little bit gray because I used such a dark eyeshadow on her. And of course, I'm just going to go back in with that powder puff and blend it in on those areas I applied that concealer. Trying not to go too far. I'm literally just staying in the places I had placed the concealer with that brush. You want to go back and forth with your face products just like you go back and forth with your eyeshadow. So after I blend that out, I just go through with that same brush I did that contour with and just make sure it's completely blended. Because I put some concealer in the front, I just want to go back through and secure that blend. To set the entire face today, I'm going to be using some Dermablend translucent powder, and I'm just going to go through with a light layer first and set under her eyes, having her look straight up so that way her eyes don't crease. And I'm just going to set one eye at a time. When I get my powder on my powder puff, I like to dab off a little bit on a paper towel to make sure that it's completely even. And I'm going to use this to set under her eyes, above her nose, on her chin. I'm going to use this to reverse contour underneath her cheekbones later on, and I'm going to use this to bake on her nose as well. The same powder I use to set the highlight on the forehead is the same powder I use to go over the contour as well, because I like to neutralize that color and make sure the forehead has all the same color, because although I want to contour it later, I basically want it to be genuinely the same shade. As you can see, I'm really not using a lot of powder. You can't even tell that it's like setting the face all the way because I'm using such a light amount. Then I'm going to go through with that same powder I used before just to place the eyeshadow in the front of her eyes. I'm just going to use this to contour her nose, and then I'm going to go through with the same translucent powder and reverse contour. This translucent powder I'm going to leave on her face to bake under her eyes, and then I'm also going to leave it on her nose so that way I can bake on her nose as well. Today I'm going to bronze up her face with this Juvia's Place, and I actually was looking for my NARS palette and I couldn't find it. So I'm just going to use this Real Technique dupe, and I'm just going to go over the places I put her cream contour, making sure I'm using that brush to blend off some of the baking powder on the edges. I like to leave the baking powder on and then do the contour and the blush because it just makes that baked powder blend in seamlessly. For blush today, I'm going to go for Girl Code Cosmetics, and this is their Blushy Me blush palette. I'm going to use the lightest pink from the palette, and I'm going to have her look up as I put the blush on so that way I don't like fiddle with her eyelashes too much, and I can get really up close to her eye if I choose to with this blush. I really feel like this was the perfect pink for her face. It just toned it really, really well, and it blended really well with the other products that were already on her face. This palette is also multifunctional. If y'all didn't know, I already did a YouTube video using this same palette as eyeshadow, as blush. I used it like 3 different times on one of my tutorials, so just make sure you go check that video out as well. Y'all see how close up to her eye I get with this blush? That's why I have them look up, because I'll get really close to the eye with the blush. When I get done with blush, we're going to move on to one of my favorite parts. That's reverse contouring. I don't know, I just like the way it just makes the cheeks pop out. So I'm just going to take the same translucent powder and go on the other side of her contour to reverse contour her cheeks and to set the bottom part of her face. This is setting the foundation parts of her face, and I also went through with a little bit more for her forehead. Taking my handy dandy Inglot gel liner, I'm just going to take this liner on a disposable lip brush, and I love doing this way because the tip of it, like the fact that it has like the little cloth on the outside, it doesn't irritate the eyes as much, and I find that my clients' eyes water less. I'm not saying it prevents them from crying, but it does help with the situation. And then I'm going to go through and just blend it out with the brush with nothing on it. I didn't have enough liner on the eye to do what I wanted to do, so I've added some more liner, and then I went through to go smoke it out. As you can see, I'm smoking out that black liner. That's what I wanted, so I had to go add some more into her waterline, and then I just smoked that out with this brush. And I think I went through with that dark brown I used on her lid, and I added some extra smoke to blend it out. Yeah, this is right where I went in with a little bit of that dark brown and blended it out. Now it's time for lashes, and I just go through with my Duo Lash Glue, and I'm going to do a light line of Duo Lash Glue on her natural lash line. This is going to add for some extra adhesive for her lashes later on, and I put some on the false eyelashes to dry, and while this is drying, I'm going to go through and do her mascara. I always do the bottom and then the top, so that way when she looks up, her mascara doesn't transfer to her eyelid. When I do my mascara, I go like side to side and sort of like shake it going up the lash. That's actually how you're supposed to use this better than Sex mascara. You're supposed to put some on the lash and then shake it from side to side and go up the lash, and it's supposed to perfectly coat the lash. By the way, I bet y'all didn't know the shape of the brush is actually supposed to be mirrored after Marilyn Monroe's body shape. Bet y'all didn't know that? I'm going to take my Milani liner in Soffy Toffee, and I'm just going to overline her lips. I love overlining the lips. It really transforms the look completely. I had her smile just a little bit so it would stretch her lips out. Today I didn't have her press her lips together with the line. I just had her smile a little bit so I could see that line on the outside of her lips a little bit more. When I get done with my liner, I just like to fill in the edges and in the corner, and I'm going to go through with my disposable lip pencil, and I'm just going to, not disposable lip pencil, disposable lip brush, and I'm just going to blend out the edges on the inside of the lips. For lip gloss, I'm going to go in with my Ariel K Experience lip gloss. I've been obsessed with it. I think I used it in like 30 videos. But I'm just going to put this in the middle, and y'all know I'm going to have her tap her lips together till it blends out. And at this point, the lashes were dry. I don't like to let them dry too much, just enough for the lashes to turn clear. Well, not the lashes turn clear, but the lash glue turn clear. And I'm just going to place that on the edge of her eyelash, and then I'm going to place the front on the eyelash. Y'all, the lashes I added on this look ate it up. The lashes took it from like a 7 to a 9 real quick. So I went through and added some clear lip gloss over her lip liner, and then I had her pat her lips together to blend it through again. By the way, these are Shein lashes. I will probably do another video on all the Shein products I use, but these lashes are from Shein, and most of my brushes are from Shein as well. Now I'm going to tap that baking powder into her skin using my tapered brush, and I'm just going to tap it underneath her eyes, blending it into that blush, and then I'm going to blend it into her nose contour, so that way there's not a harsh line of demarcation and you don't really see too much of that baking powder. Next time I do her face, I think I'm going to go through with a little bit of white powder underneath her eyes to add some more brightness. I don't know, I think I'm going to spice it up next time. I'm going to set her face with some Morphe Continuous Setting Spray, and then I'm going to go through with my Triangle Powder Puff, and I'm just going to press that spray into the powders on her face. This kind of melts everything together, and it adds to the blend because the Triangle Powder Puff is doing some blending at the same time it's pressing that into the skin. Taking my Champagne Pop highlighter from Becca, I'm just going to put it on the tip of her nose, the bridge of her nose, and a little bit in the middle of her forehead, and blend it in between her eyebrows. I'm also going to use a little bit of this highlighter to highlight the brow bone above her eyeshadow. For the final seal, I'm going to do a little bit more of that Morphe setting spray, and I'm going to use some of my airbrush setting spray, and I'm just going to spray this all over her face, and I'm going to press it in once again with my triangle powder puff, and that is exactly what I did to get this look. I really hope y'all loved it. I know she loved it. I know Facebook loved it. I know Instagram loved it, and TikTok loved it. So I hope y'all like it here. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and follow me on all my social media at I am Shanti Slays. I will see y'all later.